Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in and welcome back. This is Sean from SGT Report with a very power-packed interview, a roundtable with 412 Anon and Breaking Spectre. We're calling this one Dark to Light, exposing the 2018 midterms, because there is corruption, and it's not just confined to Broward County and Brenda Snipes. It's not just confined to Arizona. It's corruption from sea to shining sea, and I believe these demo rats have stolen the House. We're going to break it all down for you right now. I'll welcome the guests. 412, thanks for coming back on.
Hey, thanks for having me again, Sean.
Yeah, and thanks for getting us in touch with Breaking Spectre. Spectre, you've done a remarkable job here. Welcome.
Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll shut up and I'll turn it over to you, Spectre. These demo rats have stolen elections, not just this year. This is something that they do historically. It needs to be brought to an end. And QAnon has shown us some maps of the corruption, and you've sort of taken those maps and run with them to help quantify the corruption, correct?
Correct. Yep. So with that, if you're ready, we'll just jump right in.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, these presentations are like a new segment we're kind of putting together over at We the People Insider on YouTube. We're calling them Zooming In, and you'll see why as Spectre shows off his brilliant work. But yeah, I just wanted to let people know if they like this platform and this style of presentation, we'll be uploading these about once or twice a week over at We the People Insider.
Right on. And where is, just flesh that out, how do people find We the People Insider?
It's on YouTube. You type it in, you'll see Lindsey Graham fixing his tie. We're just getting started, so we're a small channel. We have a website that's coming at wethepeopleinsider.com. You'll see a sign up page there for you guys to check out. It's not quite launched yet, but we have a lot of big things coming with that. So very much looking forward to it.
All right, great. All right, check that out on YouTube, guys, and subscribe. And now we'll turn it over to Spectre to help break down this massive corruption. And guys, I got to tell you, I'm a little frustrated by what we've seen happen in Arizona. What, the GOP is just going to stand down and let that one go? And Brenda Snipes should have been arrested already. She's in contempt of court in a direct court order from a judge. So I don't know. I don't know how we prevent this, guys. If Q's right, it will all be stopped, and dark will be brought to light. Spectre, your thoughts?
Yeah, let's just jump right in here. I'm going to kind of seesaw around a little bit, but hopefully in the end it makes sense. So we'll start off just jumping right in. Some of the highlights, some of the good things that did come out of this, we did see in West Virginia, for example, they were voting for pro-life amendments saying there is no right to abortion. Now, I don't know whether or not that technically passed or not, but at least it was on the ballot at the time. We did see that VP Pence's brother did get in Indiana. That was a good thing.
That was a flip seat too, if I'm correct.
Right. And also we saw some interesting things go on with the states, trying to assert states' rights, which was against what Sessions had been against federally bringing marijuana into the fold. And we saw Michigan pass legislation, or put it on the ballot rather, for recreational marijuana. We also saw down in Missouri, where Trump campaigned heavily, Hawley got rid of McCaskill, and thanks to Project Veritas on that one as well. And in the meantime, Missouri also voted for medical marijuana, and we also saw Utah do the same. So aside from that, I kind of want to take you backwards a little bit here. And to do that, we got to understand a little bit of history here. Many of you in your audience, maybe you've seen this video, maybe you haven't, I don't know. But go back and take a look at this video. American Election Hacker Testifies. This was Clinton Eugene Curtis seen in a video testifying under oath in front of the U.S. House Judiciary members in Ohio, stating that this stealing has been in place via algorithms and whatnot through the voting machine since 2000 in order to sway the vote 51-49. And what do we typically see? Just exactly that. Also, from 2012, Michael Snyder had a good article here highlighting all the corruption even back then, highlighting over 70,000 reports of voting problems on election day. This was 2012 when Hussein was still in office.
Yeah. And I believe it was Hussein who said that you'd be more likely to get hit by lightning twice in the same spot than, be able to participate in voter fraud or something to that effect. Completely ridiculous statement as we're seeing.
In 2016, we saw some interesting things. There's a number of articles that we found out during the presidential election. This astounding discovery comes on the heels of Project Veritas's damning videos. They were effective even back then, discussing how Democratic operatives have been trying to rig elections for the last 50 years. We also saw Georgia being a major player even back then, confirming that its election systems were the subject of cyber attacks on 10 separate occasions, with each attack originating from DHS IP addresses. Well, what was the DHS doing back then? Well, they were working overtime to add new Americans into the system to vote. We saw significant resources sending letters to 9 million green card holders, urging them to naturalize prior to the election. I think we saw InfoWars highlight Bev Harris and the fraction magic stuff going on back then on how the votes were actually counted. A lot of articles about that. We saw that Democrat voter fraud favoring Dems caught in swing states. We also saw hackers were arrested for actually exposing flaws in election sites. No, don't look here.
Right? Nothing to see here. Move along.
7 minutes to steal the American vote. American democracy was astonishingly vulnerable. And so that article highlighted a lot of that stuff, as well as rigged elections. We saw, will the election be hacked? Because hacking, obviously, back in 2016 was a big topic around the Hillary servers. So there's lots of questions about the rigging and hacking going on there. And we also saw Georgia accused Homeland Security of attempting to hack the state's elections, which they did, and I think even a later article confirmed that 5 states were hacked, if I recall correctly. Zero Hedge highlighted new poll shows Americans see media as a much greater threat to the election. And I think that is absolutely still true today.
Let me ask you about that one. I recall that that news item from Georgia about Homeland Security being caught attempting to hack. Now, Homeland Security would probably say, well, we were just testing to see if the elections were secure. Q has made it sound like it's a good thing that DHS has been given some power here in investigating the voter fraud we've seen. Your comments on that? DHS is now suddenly to be trusted?
Well, keep in mind who was in charge back in 2016 and who was head of DHS. Was that not Jay Johnson?
Mm-hmm.
And whose side was he on? So
who's in charge over at DHS now? Remind us.
I think that's this Nielsen that's about to get fired, right?
Mm.
So, I mean, the players have changed, yes. We know Trump has everything in his hands, NSA, military intelligence, DHS. That's all swung to the good because why? They never thought she would lose. So we have all these tools that they thought they were going to use against us now at his disposal. So mind you, this was 2016. The things have changed hands, obviously. That being said, Lady Liberty highlights classic genius. This is epic, driving home the truth, pun intended. Someone was following Gavin Newsom's socialism as great bus tour around with a truck featuring arrows pointing forward saying lost jobs and higher taxes ahead. And this is a great pivot point. Why? Because think of what this election is about. Socialism versus free market, good versus evil, Dem versus Republican, call it what you will. But I think this is a very, very pivotal election. And this says a lot about that. Q had a little bit to say about that as well in 2462, and he came through and reminded us on Friday evening. Think logically. You know, we've got all these players in our back pocket. We got Huber, we got Goodlatte, Gowdy, Sessions. What are their roles? How many times has he called us back to the Turley Sessions Breitbart article to go back and reread 8-10 times, understand it? And how did Q finish this particular post? The world is watching, the world is witnessing the true identity of the D Party, and he finished with
war.
And also, Q came back and told us told us a few days before and reminded us that we are at war. So what was our focus on just immediately prior to the elections? We were focused on the caravan, right? And the Dem Socialists of America highlighted that we want to stand in solidarity, donate. Judicial Watch came through and told us, hey, this caravan of Central Americans marching towards the U.S. poses a serious public health threat could bring dangerous diseases into the country. But mysteriously, all that has been muted here as of late.
Hey, can I make a comment? Just
Sure.
backing up real quickly to that picture of the Gavin Newsom bus.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, People may not know this, but it won't surprise anybody to hear that. Let me just read this. It's from the SACB out there in California. Gavin Newsom is replacing criminal governor Jerry Brown. Criminal governor Jerry Brown signed the mandatory vaccinations bill requiring every parent in that state to vaccinate their kids, regardless of whether or not you homeschool, public school, private school, whatever. He's being replaced. Oh, and by the way, the same governor, the criminal governor, that signed a bill in September allowing utilities like PG&E, who are directly responsible for these horrific fires we've seen back in October of 2017, and more recently, it looks like this campfire in Malibu and Paradise, PG&E's fault. And this criminal governor in September signed a bill allowing these utilities to bill their customers for losses and lawsuits that come from these wildfires. So once again, it's a bailout for Rothschild, PG&E, and guess who the criminal governor is being replaced by? Gavin Newsom, who opened up a wine shop in 1992 with the financial backing of family friend and oil fortune heir Gordon Getty. Newsom's father, a classmate and close advisor of Getty, urged another prominent friend, John Burton, to recommend then Mayor Willie Brown to appoint him to a vacant seat on the Board of Supervisors. Guys, you can't make this up. California is a nightmare state, a Marxist state. It's being run by oligarchs and elites, and it's just going to be more of the same under Getty puppet Gavin Newsom. I knew the history. I just wanted to find the article to back it up. More of the same for you folks in California, and may God help you, because they are out to get you. You're being targeted in California by these wildfires, by the taxes, and by the Marxist agenda of people like Gavin Newsom.
Lovely. So, aside from the caravan, what did we see leading up to the election and day of? Well, there were a couple things going on. We saw some of this stuff with Chelsea Handler trying to go nude to urge Americans to vote like your life depends on it. Saw the typical stuff happening with yard signs. Unfortunately, this one wasn't a electrified signs like what we saw back in 2016. And of course, big tech had their part to play in this. Google was certainly a part of the mix, trying to suppress the vote, and search engines, Candace Owens on the Brexit movement.
Yeah, they were doing that in 2016 too.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And one of these things that people probably might have missed just prior to the election, Q Post 2446 actually highlighted this. DOJ is to monitor polls in 19 states to prevent voter fraud. Gee, do we think Arizona, Florida, Texas might be one of those few states that were part of that 19? I would tend to believe so. And day of voting, we saw some tweets and articles come out that there was election tampering. They had signs on polling places to vote straight Democrat. There was chaos at the polls. Voting machines were malfunctioning, frustrating delays. Hillary Clinton came and reminded us for her side, urged Americans to vote in Tuesday's election to put a check on Trump. And this just kind of highlights some of the headline changes via Zero Hedge the day of election. It went from blue wave a dud, Dem odds to take House slide. It ultimately ended up Democrats win control of the U.S. House, and Republicans keep Senate. And there's also a Daily Caller article stating that.
You know, here's the thing I want to say about these midterm elections. You guys weigh in on this. I find this whole thing so frustrating because if you take a look at Trump's rallies, you're talking about tens of thousands of people showing up at every rally. So these are voters who are going to get out and vote. Almost 90% of those people are probably locked in to actually get off their butts and go vote in the midterms. It's widely recognized and known that in these midterm elections, a lot of the lower income people who struggle, don't vote. It's more educated, upper middle class people that get out and vote in midterms. I just don't think the numbers add up. And they didn't get as many House seats as, has happened, I guess, in previous elections, but I think they stole the House. And when we talk about DOJ trying to protect the integrity of the elections, how are they to do that? Who is making sure that these voting machines, like when I went and voted, it was a hand ballot. I checked who I wanted in each race. but then you stick it into a machine. I mean, these machines are easily hackable. So how do we know that there's any election integrity at all?
I don't I don't know if I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but I think the writing or they tip their hand when they start finding these mysterious votes after the fact, and they always seem to go to the left. That's what gets me is, how is it that they find these miracle votes in races where they're losing, and they count them, and 90% of them are for the left. I mean, if that's not obvious, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and then CNN, the narrative is Republican accusations of voter fraud and tampering down in Broward County with no proof. And again, if it was the Republicans that were finding mystery boxes of votes, mystery boxes of ballots, blank ballots, and whatever, CNN would be screaming bloody murder. So anyway, it's just the most frustrating damn thing in the world, because we know that they are stealing the republic from the people. That's what they're doing. And these Marxists are our enemies, and they're the enemies of the Constitution. And now they control the House, and now there's going to be nonstop talk about impeaching Trump, and a bunch of the Russiagate investigations will be relaunched. And it's just a quagmire. And I hope Q's right, but we better see some action out of President Trump in the next 2 months. We better see D-class of FISA. That better happen before these new demo rats get sworn in the House.
I'm really glad you brought that up. To your early point on the crowd size, I've saved something for the end I think you're going to like that'll kind of highlight that. And to your second point, I think you're absolutely right. It's the playbook, right? How many times has Q alluded to the playbook? It's a tired old playbook. Well, it's election time. Here we go. We got to get the foot soldiers in place, the financing. Mysteriously, votes start showing up here, there, and everywhere. It's the old adage, Republicans work for a living, Democrats vote for a living.
Yeah.
So,
I also want to point out the voter suppression from the mainstream media. What they did on election night was absolutely despicable. You had Fox News, NBC, pretty much all of them calling the House for the Democrats with 90 minutes before the polls even closed on the West Coast. Absolutely absurd. I couldn't believe it when they did that.
I know, and we've seen it in years past, right? We've seen this in years past, and then they always say, "Oh, well, we won't do that again," and then they do it again.
Yeah, it just goes to show you how all of these mainstream media outlets are all pretty much one and the same. Whether it's CNN or Fox, they're really all playing for the same team, and you saw it clear as day on the election night.
Okay, that being said, let me fly through the states and see some of the corruption we saw through the other states aside from the major states we want to look at: Arizona, Florida, Georgia. New Jersey, Project Veritas focused on them with electioneering in New Jersey. Absolutely, 4 Democrats, and this was in Menendez's area. We also saw Scott Fallon highlight this about this Evelyn Arroyo Maltzby, a juror on his federal corruption trial, who achieved some fame when she left the jury last year during deliberations to go on vacation, and would have voted for acquittal. Pure coincidence, I'm sure. And there's our darling, Ocasio-Cortez, who got in New York. And boy, I sure hope she works a few extra hours at her bartending job to be able to afford that apartment in D.C.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. That's where this country's headed, folks. Cortez is where this country is headed if we continue to allow election fraud, and if we continue to allow George Soros to run around as a free man, spreading his Marxist talking points and infiltrating our republic with these toxic type of people. That's where we're headed. Cortez and Gavin Newsom. We got Cortez on the East Coast, Gavin Newsom on the West, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, and they want to inundate this entire country with like-minded people just like them.
Yep, but wait, there's more. Maryland, federal courts find Democrats unlawfully gerrymandered a Maryland congressional seat. No surprises, that's fairly typical. Over to Pennsylvania, day of elections, we saw a man threaten to get a gun and shoot up polling place. Not sure if that guy's been MK Ultra'd or not. Over to Ohio, I think Project Veritas again highlighted some of the voter fraud. A couple videos there. Ohio electioneering, election off, recommends vote for Sherrod. Up to Michigan, we saw Rashida Tlaib, the first Palestinian and Muslim American congressman, proclaims victory. But we also saw a day of election, voters were turned away due to missing voting machines at precincts.
I want to go back to the last one about the Muslim woman getting in. There was a question at the press conference, Donald Trump's press conference the day after. And I just want to highlight the way the question was asked, where the woman said, you know, we had three Muslim candidates win their election last night. Do you see that as a rebuke to your message? Basically, a backhanded way of calling Donald Trump a racist towards Muslim people, which just isn't true at all. It's just more of the mainstream media in their backhanded way of kind of planting these ideas. You know, not it just really ticked me off. But,
No, but that's their narrative, right?
yep.
See, they like to turn truth upside down. They turn everything on its back, because anybody that's looking at what's going on in the EU, look at what's going on in France, look what's going on in Sweden. You open your borders to another culture. I think it was Paul Joseph Watson who said, if you let the third world come into the first world becomes the third world. I mean, if you want their culture to inundate your culture soon enough will become their culture. They're going to just break everything. And it's not a racist thing. It's more of an ideology. It's a culture thing, right? A lot of these people coming in do not want to be Americans. They just want to live in this country and have all the rights and privileges of living in this country without being Americanized. So that's
Right.
why I like Trump as a nationalist. That's the dirty N-word that they don't want him saying. That's the George Soros N-word. He hates the word nationalism, right? Because they don't want sovereign nations with secure borders. They want to destroy this country just like they've destroyed so many nation states in the EU. And thank God, a lot of these nations in the EU are starting to rebel. They don't want to be ruled by unelected bureaucrats in Brussels.
Yep. I think, you know, the nationalist movement here in America is kind of leading the way there. You know, we've seen in Brazil and in Italy, them kind of turn back to nationalist leadership. And I think that trend will continue as, America's always leading the way and kind of the shining beacon of light, you know, for freedom. And where America goes, the world seems to follow. So I think as, you know, the MAGA agenda continues to progress, we'll see more and more countries all over the world kind of want to get their own act in line.
Yeah. Well, I'll try not to interject as much here in the night. We've got 30 minutes left, and I want Spectre to be able to get through this. I don't know if I'll be able to hold back though, because this whole subject has me so angry, because I don't like what we saw happen in Arizona, and I don't want to see it happen in Florida. And Q's saying we've got it all, right? The midterms are secure, the elections are secure, I think is one of the messages he sent out. I need to see the proof of that. Spectre, I hope you show me some.
Okay, let's see what we can do here. Let's finish getting through the rest of the states before we get to the major states. Indiana also saw more than 22,000 votes not included in St. Joseph County election results. And over to Illinois here, we saw some interesting stuff out of St. Clair County in Illinois, which had a long history of confirmed cases of voter fraud based around official Kelvin Ellis, who was sentenced for attempting to arrange a murder of a witness to the county's rigged voting system. And we had Rauner get kicked out in favor of a guy who spent about 170 grand a day to try and buy his seat, which he eventually did. Pritzker. And over to Montana, where Trump campaigned heavily. We saw John Tester get in, and I think there's been a lot of speculation as to whether or not that vote had also been stolen. So, over to California. Storm was upon us highlights. Why does a congresswoman have a stake in a company that supplies voting equipment? Feinstein owns controlling interest in Avid Election Management MSM teleprompter control system. Well, that's very interesting. And now down to Texas, we'll talk about James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, what they were doing down there with the Beto O'Rourke stuff, highlighting Jody Casey about the tapes they were about to launch. And there was a couple videos that came out about them, including non-citizens voting in Texas. We don't check for citizenship. Texas poll worker says we don't verify status of voters. And other interesting bits out of Texas. We saw an indicted Texas border area judge win the appellate court election. And also along the line of judgeships, we saw a Texas judge release juvenile defendants after losing his election, stating it was what voters wanted. How nice. So now over to Arizona. We saw some interesting things come through. We saw that the polling place in some cases were foreclosed upon, preventing people from going in and actually polling. 3 polling places are currently down. And we also saw in Maricopa County, election officials, 72 polling places weren't even ready for voters the day of election. 100% fed up highlighted just in AZ polling place in heavily Republican precincts turns away voters, writes their names and self numbers on scratch paper and says, "We'll get back to you."
Yeah.
Perfectly believable.
Yeah, I'm sure they held their breath.
So more on Arizona. What else did we see? Well, Sinema widened the lead on McSally in Arizona state race as vote count ensued, 32,000 votes as of Sunday. And we also saw a couple things. Charlie Kirk highlighted via Judicial Watch 143,000 and change new voter registrations in Maricopa County alone. 1,470 registrants provided alien registration numbers. They're illegal foreign citizens not allowed to vote or register. But rest assured, Jeff Flake told us, hey, there's no evidence of electoral corruption in Arizona, Mr. President. In the meantime, over at the Common Sense Show, they highlighted that KTAR FM news radio breaks federal election law, and they were doing some electioneering for Sinema.
Let me ask you guys about this race, though, because here's what absolutely ticks me off. We have CNN reporting, gloating essentially here on November 13th. Democrats flip Arizona U.S. Senate seat with Sinema victory. So they're thrilled. And if this whole narrative had happened the exact opposite way, CNN would be freaking out, right? Because they would say the Republicans came in and stole the Senate seat. So did Sinema not concede? I thought she conceded the night of the election.
She did.
Okay, so how in the world is this allowed to stand? They just find a bunch of mystery votes. They create votes. See, this is the heart of what I want to talk about in this conversation. Can somebody, one of you, please shine some light on this for me? Because it seems to me the GOP just stood down in this particular race during this recount, and it wasn't even a recount. They just stood down during this particular race. Is there any evidence that anybody was down there trying to fight the good fight?
I've seen nothing. Honestly, this has been the most disappointing part of this election is this race in Arizona for me. It was called for McSally, and then the next day they find 500,000 votes or something like that, and it's just and the lead just disappeared, and no one seems to be doing much about it. I really hope that we learn some more. Spectre mentioned the 19 states that they were going to be looking at. I have to imagine Arizona being on the border is one of them.
Absolutely.
Maybe we'll see something come down from this. I don't see Sinema getting sworn in January. Something's got to give. If there's any justice in this world, there's no way that state flips blue, and there's just no way they allow it to happen.
I've got to believe that the run rate that we've had for sealed indictments has been about 5,000-6,000 a month. I would just about bet that we're going to see an uptick at the next monthly release, based on what we've found through this election cycle. My take. In any case, we saw a Gateway pundit come through. Signatures don't match. Trump was well aware of what was going on and sounded the alarm on the election rigging and fraud going on in Arizona. So that was also highlighted. And just last night, we saw that Sinema defeats Martha McSally in Arizona. Arizona voters spoke. Yeah, right. And I think Q had a little bit to say about that in Q Post 2492. So over to Georgia.
Well, wait, let's stop. You say 2492. Sure. Let's find it. Does somebody have that up? Can somebody read?
I can read it. I have it up right now.
All right. Yeah. Well, give us context then. What did Q say about that?
He says, Arizona, Republican governor won by 328,000 votes. Democrat senator is winning by 32,000 votes. Republican governor won Maricopa County by 325,000 votes. The Democrat senator winning by 32,000 votes. 350,000 votes swing to the Democrat senator, ? Q. So I think Hugh's calling it out. I really don't think that they're going to allow this to happen. I think the hammer is about to drop on this whole election fraud thing. If Hugh's talking about it, you had Trump mention the potential of a redo on the election or a new election in Arizona. I would stay tuned. It's incredibly frustrating. It makes your skin crawl when you think about what's happening. But every time I've had that feeling throughout this administration about something, it turned out to work out on our side. I had the exact same feeling when, they extended the FBI investigation on Kavanaugh right after they voted him out of committee. I had the same feeling in the pit of my stomach then as I do about this. I trust President Trump is going to make sure that the will of the American people isn't subverted in this election.
All right. Well, I hope so. And it's Q Post 2479 that gives me some hope. What if the below could be proven? I won't read the whole thing. I essentially did a video about it, which you guys can watch, which is called Enemy at the Front Door. And the first 4 minutes is about that. And the rest of the video is about PG&E, Rothschild's PG&E, blowing up the state of California on purpose. And, of course, having total immunity thanks to criminal governor Jerry Brown, because they'll just charge their own customers to pay for the lawsuits that will stem from the PG&E ineptitude, right? The PG&E, what would you call it? Incompetence? No, I think it's malevolence, and I think it was all done on purpose. I'll turn it back over to you, Spectre. I won't shut up. I'm so angry today. I'm in a real fit of rage over what we're seeing. From sea to shining sea, we want to see justice, and at this point, we're still seeing the opposite of justice. So I certainly hope the Q's right, and we start to see some D-class, and we start to see some heads roll.
You're not alone. And I think that this is what we're supposed to do, is get pissed off about this and start demanding some real voter ID laws. This is the exact kind of fuel and motivation we need to get some real voter ID laws.
What has Q said time and time again? Be loud, be heard. If this doesn't get you fired up and get you out on the streets or writing your representatives, what have you, then I don't know what else will. So over to Georgia, 2 states to go here. Before the election, Georgia investigating Democrats for allegedly hacking the voting system. Maybe this was a little bit of a precursor Sunday before the elections. And of course, then we get into this gaggle of stuff. And starting off, we saw breaking 911 come through. Voting hours had been extended at 3 polling places in Georgia's Fulton County, home to much of Atlanta. We saw Stacey Abrams refusing to concede, saying victory was within reach. So basically, she must have been promised a seat, and now that she was on the losing end, was trying to find the votes. And we also saw out of big league politics, Stacey Abrams worked with the Democratic Socialists of America and trying to put some legislation together, bills to scare the right wing. That was out of big league politics. And then the Epoch Times comes through and says, Kemp calls on Abrams to concede in Georgia.
And by the way, isn't her sister a judge somehow connected to someone?
You're getting ahead of me, but yes, we're coming up.
I mean, no, but literally, and I have to say in her defense, I've seen her, well, it wasn't a concession speech because she didn't concede. She's very eloquent. She's very well spoken, but she's also a hardcore Marxist Democrat. So by nature, by virtue of her stripes as a tiger, she is our enemy. And she and her well-connected sister, I think, are probably going to figure out a way to steal this thing too, unless they're stopped.
Right. So to that point, obviously, you need to rally the soldiers. We got Indivisible retweeting Stacey Abrams to volunteer out of state and visit a field office near you. Rally the foot soldiers. We got the Georgia Democrats saying breaking. A handful of Georgia counties just reported thousands of new absentee early and election day votes. Numbers did not account for, significantly closing the gap. And we also saw Bill Mitchell highlight statistically impossible. Democrats in Georgia have now mysteriously discovered another 5,500 and change votes, of which 4,800 were for Stacey Abrams. 90% for the Democrat. BS. And to your point that you just brought up, yes, let me introduce you to Leslie Joyce Abrams. She is a district judge appointed by Obama. She lives in Georgia. Her office is in Albany, Georgia. Her sister is Stacey Abrams. Guess where Stacey filed her lawsuit for more votes?
I can't take this, you guys. And that statistic you just shared, 90% of the votes were Democrat. I think that is statistically impossible, even in a place like where were the votes? Atlanta? Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's statistically impossible if you really take a look at the big picture with the walkaway movement. And Trump actually, he's got a lot of support from the black community because they're seeing jobs come back. We're seeing the economy come back for people of all colors, from all walks of life. A 90% turnout. I mean, 90% Democrat, right? No, no election rigging to
Yeah.
be seen here, folks.
It's
Remember
absurd.
that article I highlighted at the very early onset of 2012 and the 70,000 issues even back then? That report highlighted the fact that several counties actually had more people voting than people that actually lived there.
Right.
So that probably is still going on today. Big league politics came through and told us Fulton County numbers show massive duplicate ballots. Well, there's no surprise. And Trump decides to troll them as well and says, maybe we should just blame the Russians. Got to add a little bit of humor here. So off to Florida. Now, the day before, mind you, what do we see? MSNBC, quote unquote, mistakenly shows results of Florida governor's race one day early. Projection much?
Yeah, I remember that. And this has happened in years past. I've done videos on this very thing happening from mainstream media news outlets showing results before a single vote was cast.
Yep. And we had some articles here. Fox News highlighted Florida was at the center of explosive post-election fight with Scott and Nelson there. And we also had Florida's governor's race is headed for a machine recount with DeSantis. But guess what? The playbook is already fired up. So the Dem playbook, vital to any organization, for businesses to professional sports teams, and so they need to employ that and quickly. We've got an election at stake here. Broward County, 2471 Q post if you guys want to have that at the ready. Come for the murders, stay for the voter fraud. How many things have we seen out of Broward County? Caesar Sayoc was just in the news out of Broward County. We've had Muhammad Atta from 9/11, Jose Padilla, and so on and so forth. And there's the mugshots of Mr. Israel and HRC. And Millennium Report highlights definitive proof that HRC controls the digital security keys for the Florida election results from Ireland. Very interesting. And as with any playbook, we got to get our lawyers involved. So we got to get Mark Elias, a lawyer who is tied to the P dossier and Fusion GPS.
Hey, I want to remind people that Broward County really is the heart of evil. It was Branton Weisnot whose body was found on a beach down there. He was a federal prosecutor who was found dead down there, I believe shot in the back of the head. Of course, then it was later ruled a suicide. And wasn't it also Sean Lucas, is that his name, who served the DNC with papers for that DNC fraud lawsuit relating to how they stole the nomination from Bernie and gave it to Hillary? And then they were caught, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is the senator down there in her district, one of her districts is Broward County, she had to resign from being the DNC chair. So we know that that's what these people do. We know they rig elections. We know they steal elections because Debbie Wasserman Schultz helped steal it for Hillary from Bernie. And then Sean Lucas serves them with a lawsuit, and he ends up dead. And then you have the two attorneys who were overseeing that DNC lawsuit, and their names will come to me in a second. They were being harassed while that lawsuit was going on, and they were being harassed by phone, and they got a screenshot of an incoming call, and it came from Debbie Wasserman Schultz's office, and the person that was harassing them was using some voice modification technology. You can't make this stuff up. Broward County is the heart of evil.
It really is.
So moving along, fire up the foot soldiers. We got Indivisible here again coming through and saying all hands on deck in Florida. This is real. Tens of thousands of rejected absentee ballots can still be signed. Retweet. We also saw Refuse Fascism come through and say election night done right, getting ready for nationwide protest tomorrow no matter who wins. So as with any good playbook, you also got to have others not paying attention here, like Bongino, who highlights that Democrats are experts at turning out the late vote. Republicans stop voting after the polls close on Election Day, but the Dems have an incredible get-out-the-vote operation for finding new ballots after the election is over.
Yeah, and I just want to jump in and say the names came to me. It just popped into my head. I didn't even Google it. It's Jared and Elizabeth Beck. They are the ones that were overseeing the DNC lawsuit that was filed against the DNC for their criminality, and then they were being harassed. They were actually fearing for their lives after Weisnot washed up on the shore dead. The U.S. Marshals wouldn't help them out, wouldn't give them protection, even though they asked for it. Jared and Elizabeth Beck fighting the good fight against the demons down in Broward County. These people literally think they're above the law.
Yeah,
Yep.
Debbie Washman Schultz is right up there at the top of the list of these people I want to see go down in a big way.
Yeah. Podesta, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, the Podesta brothers. So Podesta squared, Hillary Clinton. Loretta Lynch
Yep.
was sitting on the tarmac with Bill Clinton, and we believe that she was promised a Senate seat when Hillary became president. I mean, thank God. Q has said, I'll tell you what, guys, I don't know what's going on here in terms of the future in Q's predictions, but Q absolutely, the one thing he said that is 100% right is that it would have been hell on earth if that witch had gotten into the White House.
Oh, yeah.
Part of the 16-year plan. So Rubio came through and warned that the Dems are actively trying to steal the election. We also saw Tim Canova tweet out that this Brenda Snipes, the head of Broward County's election board, surely wasn't very happy where she admits to illegally destroying all your paper ballots in my 2016 race against Wasserman Schultz. So you got to get the counters and that involved, certainly, to help steal the election. And we also find out about Mary Hall, who is the Broward County Supervisor of Elections, and what she was responsible for and some of her doings there. You can read that. And of course, as with every good playbook, you got to have some funding behind it. So fire up old Soros here. And you got the 2016 presidential campaign and associated with a social welfare organization financed by good old Georgie, helping to organize volunteers to help Bill Nelson.
Hey, real quick, we've got about 10 minutes left. I want your guys' comments. How is that man not arrested yet for sedition? Okay, because he's a dual citizen, but one of his citizenship holdings is as a United States citizen. How in the world has he not been investigated and arrested for sedition? Because he is seditious against this country.
Man, I gotta believe he's one of the ones that, if this plan is real, that's going to be going down. How he's still out there, I don't know. But I don't fully understand how Hillary Clinton or the Podestas or Debbie Washman Schultz are still walking the streets as free free men either. So I got to believe it's coming, but that's a good question, Sean.
Well, we'll see. We got a lot of critics saying this whole Q thing is nothing but a LARP and nonsense. I think there's so many proofs that suggest that Q is a collective of white hats closely associated with the president. That's firmly my belief based on the proofs I've seen. But look, we have got to start seeing some arrests. We have got to start seeing some of these sealed indictments unsealed. We got to start seeing some of these top players being taken down for their crimes. Because if we don't have rule of law in this country, we don't have a country. Just like Trump has said, if we don't have borders, we don't have a country. Secondary to that is we don't have rule of law. We do not have a country.
Yep. So I'm going to have to fly through the rest of this, folks. And if you want to read this, go ahead and at least pause the video so you can read it. And I'll just kind of skim through the rest. We got a little bit left here. And so, like I said, we've got as far as the playbook goes, now you got to get the media board. Of course, they got the discredit campaign saying this is all a conspiracy, and also got to get the jokesters fired up at night with Maher, whole red shoe wearing Maher. Florida's a dress rehearsal for Trump not leaving office. So back to what's going on in Florida. We got indivisible. I'm replacing my early concession with an unapologetic and uncompromised call to count every vote. And then as of Sunday night, the recount began. So in the meantime, what's going on the right side here? Well, we've got a handful of tweets here, breaking 911, calling out the unethical liberals. We got Michael Flynn Jr. here calling out Stop the Steal, Perkins Coie and Fusion GPS, very coincidental. And Posobiec also calling Governor Scott to have the state police seize all Broward and Palm Beach County outstanding ballots. We also had Bill Mitchell, typical Broward County shenanigans, tens of thousands of votes being found, all magically for Democrats, never changes. Torba also got in on the action, saying Broward County officials must give Republicans access to ballots by 7 p.m. tonight, and that would have been Saturday night. So the revelations started coming through on part of the Stop the Steal. Now, coincidentally, the bombs that were mailed from the postal office, this Opaloka mail center, happened to also have all these ballots sitting there in the wait. We had BNL News highlight, people are currently protesting. I saw that Friday into Saturday. Matt Gaetz also got in on the action, took this video as riot police removed me from where trucks were secretly loading stuff in and out of the supervisor's office. And he had the Gateway pundit highlight the fact that Brenda Snipes has got to go. Rubio also was in on this, certainly, under Florida law, highlighting that stuff. 60 hours after the deadline, only one of 67 counties is still counting early votes. And Trump highlights, thank you, Rubio, for helping to expose the potential corruption going on with respect to election theft in Broward and Palm Beach counties. The world is watching closely. And he also said, trying to steal 2 big elections in Florida. We are watching closely. And of course, we saw the trucks, and that was via Joanne Knox. And there's also her Facebook account. So if you want to pause this and read it in its entirety, go ahead and do so. So back over. Now we got to throw in some distractions because we've got way too much light getting shed on this stuff. So what happened last Thursday into Friday? Well, we got to get some shootings in the mix here. So Thousand Oaks, all of a sudden we got a shooting out there, and just so happened to be some of the folks that survived the Las Vegas attack happened to be there. And Zero Hedge also came back on Friday and says, police respond to an active shooter situation at North Carolina High School. And immediately after that, never let a good crisis go to waste. Got to take aim at gun rights. We'll push most aggressive legislation. So in the meantime, Trump hints at a federal investigation as Dems gain ground in Arizona, Florida, and Georgia. And then we also saw some more stuff revealed. My husband, John Loudon, spent the entire night, midnight to 8 a.m., watching Dems steal our Florida recount. Thousands of ballots not counted, then moved, unsecured out of view of observers, to be filled in later by unknown people. But wait, now we got another crisis going on. We got the scorched earth going on over in California. Now we got this mystery fire startup, and this highlighted the map of where the evacuation perimeters were, the road closures and traffic, and also kind of highlight here real quick, not to deviate too much, but the map of where the high-speed rail is going through. Pay attention to that going forward with all these fires and so forth, and whether or not these acreages that are being burned tend to match up with where this rail system's supposed to go through.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I saw a video about that the other day. I want to say one thing. The bigger picture is UN Agenda 21. The stated goal of UN Agenda 21 is to get people off of the land, out of the suburbs, and herded into giant regional megacities. And when I read that plan several years back, I did not have any idea how they would ever be able to implement such a dastardly evil plan, because who on earth would vote for it, who would fall for it, who would go along with it? But when you burn people out of their homes, as is now being done, and then the insurance companies say, we will not allow you to rebuild your home, here's your payout, but you can't rebuild because now it's too risky because we will not insure your property. This is how they're doing it. Agenda 21 is unfolding right before our eyes, guys. Look at the UN Agenda 21 map. They want to rewild California, and as California goes, that's what they want to do to this whole country. They want us all herded into giant megacities. So I think what's going on here with PG&E, which is Rothschild controlled, is UN Agenda 21, and that criminal governor Jerry Brown has given PG&E immunity, essentially, because he is guaranteeing that their lawsuits for everything that they have admittedly been involved with, and in many cases they've been behind these fires, and they have immunity. So there's something very, very nefarious going on here, guys, and it's not just the high-speed rail system boondoggle.
Right.
Yeah, and keep in mind the Oroville Dam stuff that took place early part of the year. It's all coming into play because with that stuff, lack of maintenance, everything else, the whole plan is to continue to flood out that area. Last but not least, Thousand Oaks Teen Center that sheltered Thousand Oaks shooting victims now was providing shelter for those evacuating the fires. Very interesting. And some interesting statistics relative to Q Post 2467 and 2469, highlighting the fact that the fires have indeed increased. You can kind of see from the regression analysis on the top there that there's been a little bit of a knee in the curve from about 2004 maybe forward. And that seems to match up with the statistics on the bottom here with the 5 or 6 fires, major fires, acreage-wise, that have taken place 2015, 2017, 2018.
I want to say something about that. This is very important. I'm working on a new video which will have been released prior to this one that you guys are watching with my interview here with 412 and Spectre. That is very, very important. These fires have become exponentially worse. They're more fast spreading, and they're more destructive than we've ever seen before. The previous most destructive fire to the Tubbs fire in 2017 was the tunnel fire in 1991. And the Tubbs fire took out nearly double as many buildings, as many structures. And the campfire one that we've just seen in Malibu and Paradise, even worse, which gets us into this theory of directed energy weapons being used to target these structures. Explain to me some of these pictures where we see burned out buildings in the middle of a parking lot, absolutely burned to the ground, and yet surrounding trees are still standing. So lots of questions. I've played clips from Deb Tavares before, which is exposing PG&E for having a conversation back in 2011 about space weather, and they had moved their receptor site for their RF wave receptor site to Sebastopol from the desert, from the Mojave Desert to Sebastopol in 2011. And then we saw that horrific Tubbs fire in Sebastopol in 2017. I don't know, guys. I'm just a researcher and a reporter. You tell me what you think about the possibility that directed energy weapons are also being used in these fires.
I mean, I just looking at the different videos we've seen, and I wouldn't doubt it at all. I'm not an expert by any stretch, but I know directed energy weapons are real. You know how they're being used. I don't have any direct evidence on me, that I could present right here, right now, but I buy the premise, that's for sure.
And look, well, it sounds preposterous, right? But watch my video, Rothschild Trillions Quantified. Okay, we know that Rothschild controls PG&E. We know that they can send up, private contractor satellites all day long through China or wherever they want. So that email reveals that they're talking about a solar satellite array sending some sort of RF waves down to a receptor site. So they have the technology. So this isn't sci-fi stuff, guys. And if they have the technology and they decide to use it against the people to serve their Agenda 21 goals, I mean, all of the dominoes seem to line up.
Yep.
All right. I digress but it's just because I'm angry because I know humanity is under attack by these people, and it would have been game over if the witch was in the White House. So I pray to God that President Trump, who's standing up against these globalists like Macron and Merkel, I pray to God that he can use the military and the rule of law to turn this thing around and start to dismantle this deep state that we clearly see in the wide open. That's my prayer.
Absolutely. So in the meantime, while all this is going on, back over to Florida to shine some more light on things, we got Pam Bondi on Saturday highlighting and sending some letters over to Secretary Detzner and Commissioner Swearingen, a pair of letters net challenging the corruption. And back over to the playbook. Well, we got to get the lawyer for the Democrat Party of Florida. Destroying ballots isn't fraud or corruption. Caught on tape saying that. And of course, Pelosi running blocking here says Pelosi dismisses Trump's charges of fraud in Florida recount. That's all hearsay. And of course, Zero Hedge says Democrat lawyers object to non-citizen Florida ballot being thrown out. Every vote counts. And Trump says a Florida election should be called in favor of Rick Scott and DeSantis, and that the large numbers of new ballots showed up out of nowhere, and many ballots are missing or forged. An honest vote count is no longer possible. Ballots massively infected must go at the election.
That tweet sums it up perfectly.
Yeah.
Again, it's just common sense versus the Mockingbird mainstream media's lies.
Yep. I think this whole video is proof. So last but not least, as of Sunday night, we had another distraction by way of Fort Lauderdale's airport quote-unquote bomb threat, which I think was likely just cover for the fact, hey, more votes to count here. And I think this Richard DiNapoli discovered where boxes were labeled provisional ballot boxes were discovered at an Avis rental agency. And he highlights that and has a video there as well. So the saga continues. And so basically this part is called Stop the Steal, which I think Ben Garrison put very well here. But wrapping up 2479, I think you alluded to this, certainly highlights this. What if all the below could be proven. Election plus Democrat Party officials filled out many thousands of blank ballots, destroyed legal ballots, non-citizen voting, et cetera, et cetera. And it highlights the Washington Post article, "Without evidence, Trump and Sessions were warning that there was going to be election fraud." So I think that pretty well sums it up. And with that, I'll leave you with this to kind of close it out. So to your point on crowd sizes, I think Q would typically say reconcile.
Yep. Remarkable job. Good job. I love that. What tool are you using to show us all that video? That is very well done.
Right up there in the left-hand corner.
Well, I'll tell you, good job. And I love it that you wrapped it up with Amazing Grace, because that took place when a woman at one of these rallies collapsed, and Trump was silent for 7 or 8 minutes as EMTs rushed to try to help her. And then the crowd spontaneously broke into Amazing Grace. And I made the point in my video, Warring Angels, you would never, ever in a million years see a Hillary Clinton crowd sing Amazing Grace, because by virtue of their belief system, it's a song they would never sing. Guys, I want to thank you so much for your time. Our guests have been 412 Anon and Breaking Spectre. Good job, fellas.
Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you so much. And guys, I want to thank each and every one of you for what you're doing within your sphere of influence on social media and otherwise to wake people up and to fight for the soul of our country, because this is a spiritual battle. It truly is a war for our nation, for the Republic, and for the Constitution. And as God would have it, hopefully it's a war we will win. Thank you so much for tuning in. We love you. And for real news 24/7, visit us at sgtreport.com. Bye-bye.
In the history of Supreme Court nomination hearings, military tribunals have never been brought up. There was a 5-minute discussion, as you outlined, between Lindsey Graham and Brett Kavanaugh about the constitutionality of military tribunals. Yes, they've been used in our country's history. Are they constitutional? Yes. Could they be used again? Yes.